Again, my name is Krzysztof Nowak. Mercer operates in retirement funds and retirement programs. This is what I do professionally. Hello, Waldemar. All right, you're here, so let me start with the panelists in the right order then. Aleksandra Fandrejewska-Tomczyk, may I say you represent Rzeczpospolita Polska newspaper? Radosław Sosna of Goldman Sachs, Marketing and Product Director. Maybe the order is different, but there we go. Maciej Krasiński, member of the board at PTE Alliance Poland. Hello. Waldemar Markiewicz, head of the board at Chamber of Brokerage Houses. And Bartosz Marczuk, vice president of the board of the Polish Development Fund, PFR. Oh, the slide is not there, but it's not as important. Let me tell you what it was about. Generally, it was about a questionnaire about what discourages Poles from investing. The answer was Poles can't afford investing. My understanding is that they understood it as, why do you think people are not investing? I asked a similar question to my panelists before, and let me use this sheet of paper. The dominant answer was quite a different one. That is, there were no investment products that would satisfy the consumer's needs. And that was the first answer. The ranking second were two answers. They don't trust financial institutions, they don't trust the state, nobody seriously knows. And frankly speaking, I decided to use these answers. I don't want to judge these answers. In any case, it's interesting to know what the open society thinks and what specialists think. In any case, let's use this as a jumping board for this discussion. It's a tough question. We're going to back to the topic of this. If I were rich, Aleksandra, do you think Poles are poor, and is this really a hurdle in saving and investing? Well, I know you keep saying that Poles are wealthy, but let me tell you that 70% of employees in Poland earn less than the average that's published by the statistical office every month. So 70% of those professionally active have less than 7.5 thousand zlotys gross available per month, and the disposable income, highest one last year, the highest average one, was 2,400 per person, and those 2.4 thousand zlotys per person were at the disposal of entrepreneurs, obviously not the big ones, the small ones. The Central Statistical Office data shows that the richest group, that is, those that constitute 20% of all those professionally active, have over 8,000 zlotys gross. So 8,000 zlotys gross, is that a lot? That's the question. I looked at this data for a long time yesterday, and this might not be an answer to your question, but maybe this is helpful. I think we live in a culture of borrowing money. Saving is not important. You're talking about young people. My children are already middle-aged, not young people. But I remember 1989, and for my generation, and supposedly for part of your generation as well, I can afford this or that meant I can afford repaying the loan. It didn't mean that I can save up for 5 years and buy my first car. No, it meant I can consider taking out a loan and repay that loan. And from 1999, we've been living in this culture of borrowing. There is no culture of saving. So regardless of whether people are rich or not, whether they have enough money or not, they will either be used to saving up and not thinking about current consumption. Because I know people who have 1,000 zlotys every month and can save up 100 zlotys every month. And I know people who earn a lot of money and don't feel such a need altogether. And one more thing, we recently saw the European Financial Congress, and alongside a great debate by the Chamber of Pension Fund companies about saving, and all the other ones were about loans and credit, etc. The only single debate was about saving. This is not a direct answer, but the conclusion is that it doesn't make a difference whether we are rich or poor. It's down to how we treat money. Do you remember yesterday one gentleman said that he was working on a strategy of economic education? I think that was the Competition Consumer Protection Office. That's what he said. I'm already afraid of that, whatever that means. And so that's educational strategy. Radosław and Aleksandra. It's terrible. It's, it's like there are no animals in the forest, but if we organize a hunting party, we're gonna find 16 foxes right next to us. I'm not talking about emotional education. It's about creating certain habits, certain patterns of behaviors. Well, fear is a motivator, definitely, but if we're talking about pensions and retirement, definitely fear is not the right kind of motivation. The issue of retirements is very dear to our hearts, both individual and group. I think it all boils down to responsibility, but there are different aspects of responsibility. One is I'm saving up for my retirement, or I'm not saving altogether because it's the responsibility of my state. But we know how things are. The second one is, I give up the responsibility to fate. Things are gonna be all right, people say. There's a group of people who are not saving, although they earn a lot, and I think you know such people. The third answer, which makes me shiver, is my family will take care of me. That is, you burden your family, your children for taking care of you when you are old and when you're not capable to maintain yourself. And the third one is I take responsibility for myself and I'll start investing. The entire difficulty is the following. I think that the retirement funds, pension funds, are a great way to draw people to the capital market, because 90% of the society, except from those ultras that have huge wealth, those unaware, unconscious incompetence this creates this need that has to be satisfied by you, by us, by employers, and generally speaking, the financial market. It has to be managed in order to bring up this awareness of incompetence, not through fear, but through this need of responsibility and taking that responsibility for my future, for my retirement. And I think this also requires changes in products and in regulation. Right, this leads us nicely to PPK. Which I think that 44% of participation, that's the result.
całym środowisku trochę narzekania. Ja nie wierzę na
it's a success. I'm not saying it's really material because it's not 50 billion zlotys, but it's something we succeeded in achieving. Are there any conclusions from this? Do we have to wait another 4 years, or can anything be done? Well, before I answer this directly, let me comment on whether we can afford saving up or not, whether we are rich or poor. Responding to what Aleksandra said, a couple of numbers. And we tend to complain that Poles are not saving, but remember that we are catching up with our lag stemming from the communist times. We have a certain historical experience, and remember that we are saving up 20% per month for our pensions. 12.5 million people out of 17 professionally active are saving up 19.5 or less % for their pension. The dynamism in this wealth building process is, I think, remember that 15 years ago, the excess of income over expenditure in the average household was around 10%. This changes significantly in 2021. We saw the first year where we were close to almost 40%. 33% was what they were spending on an ongoing manner, and 37% was the excess over expenditure. And 2022, the main statistical office recently said it dropped down to 65% due to high inflation, but the dynamism is there, and it's something to work on. Like the host said, we as households, we publish this regular report about households. 400 billion zlotys in cash. We have 700 billion zlotys, 1.3 billion and 700 billion in deposit, which gives a real loss. So there's there's something we can work on. But remember, we are learning a capitalist market, financial market. We have a different history in other countries, and I think that we remember how it works in church. First, you have to confess, etc. There's the entire process, and bear in mind the 10% commissions. People bear that in mind. People remember that. Remember, it's a part of our heritage, and this generates huge losses in open pension funds and the pension fund institutions, and the whole issue of 2013. Now, this leads me to PPK. Ladies and gentlemen, we managed to do in the last years is to go from the level of, a hole in the ground to a sturdy building with, the ground floor. And what's happened in the last 4 years? Well, in 1999, when the general retirement reform was implemented, Poles were encouraged to save long-term, IKE, IKZE, and in 2020, that is 20 years past the reform. How many do we have long-term savers, investors for pensions? 1 million, not even that. 300,000 in PPE, IKE, IKZE. So around 900,000 people, 1 million people. We don't have exact data yet. Only when the central pensions information database is built, we will have full information. Now, what is happening in 2023? Well, after the implementation of PPK, we have long-term savers, so 4.5 million, so it's better, right? 3.3 million people in PPK, almost 600,000 people in PPE, because it's grown significantly since the implementation of the PPK reform, and then participants of ECA and XVIII. So we have 4.5 million participants, which has been a dream for a long time. We have this group of people who are saving money in the long term. Now, again, referring to what Aleksandra said, I don't like complaining about Poles being, unaware, unconscious of reality. They have to be educated, explain things, etc. Of course, you need education, and the PFR with the Ministry of Digitization are working on this, among others. Thanks to your participation, we're working on this system. Poles will have access through mObywatel about all their pension funds, both the public funds, the employer funds, private funds, and they will see calculators, scenarios for the future. They can interact with the system by saying, I want this and that amount for my retirement, and they will be given information of how much they should be saving. And it's also an opportunity for you to think through this and the opportunities created by this. We are building this central database, and now about 10 million Poles are using mObywatel, and even if 20-30% will be using it at the start next year, they will see their possible future, and they may make decisions about starting saving up. I think it's a solution for young people. You don't necessarily have to have an account to use this. I'm smiling here at the President Rusevich, because in all kinds of debates and conversations we've seen a very good debate, a very good kind of collaboration. There's a working group, we see representatives, and we're working on implementing this. Wrapping up in terms of PPK and the future, I think 30% more accounts per month. PPK will see almost 600 million zlotys. 17 billion zlotys is the worth of the asset. In big enterprises, the participation stands at around 60%. And if we take into account that in PPE, do you know what the participation is? There we have 65%. So there is room for improvement, for education.
czyli tam, gdzie dostaje po prostu pieniądze od swojego pracodawcy, są jego prywatne, indywidualne pieniądze.
So individual money is allocated on the account, private money of employees. But let's take into account the perception of the Polish people and their perception of all these challenges, because I believe in the common sense of the Polish people after all the experience that they have with open-ended pension funds, with the capital market, with fees and charges that were charged from them, and I think that they need a long-term investment in their knowledge and in their some level of confidence. So I wish that to all of us. Over to Maciej. The context has been already sketched, but I would ask a question, because this is an untapped potential. You can fight and treat it as a war, because open pension funds was like a worship. The success of PPK is tangible,
To jest materialne, szczególnie jak się patrzy na inne rzeczy.
especially if we take a look at different things. We're talking about a few dozen of billions. I tried to calculate it in my head. So this is something I'd like to stress, and maybe once again I like simple solutions. I understand that that's a stupid idea, but maybe let's choose the easy way and let's start. Maciej, with regard to this idea, because of course that would be attractive to me, but remember that we will kill the stock exchange, because remember that in PPK we can ask a return at any point, because people, about 300,000 people tested the system, they paid out their money to test how it works. So if somebody goes to PPK, we have the situation that 100 million PLN goes to participants of PPK, and maybe part of them would decide to withdraw. It would be worse if it got to ZUS. As a final note, if we talk about a solution to this problem, I think that this idea that people choose for themselves and the money goes to the social insurance institution, and it is managed by the Polish Development Fund, and it's spent on the 13th or 14th pension to seniors. Business people will be surprised with the fact that there is only one manager from PFR present at committees, not 12 representatives of funds. I would tell that long-term interest rates are rather positive, and that's good in the context of investment on the capital market. Of course, there were some. I didn't say that they are not solvent. I was talking about extra charges and extra costs that were incurred with regard to the profit. But going back to the main topic, yesterday we've been talking about stability and balance, and what is the position of open pension funds. So in the context of entire capital market, this is a period of stability. We all know that the security zip is on, and at some point the second pillar will be closed. But when discussing about the future of open pension fund, we need to remember that all arguments used in the discussion will be far-reaching, far out of open pension funds. The impact on customer will be immense, and I'm not talking only about the confidence in long-term investment, because that's the major element, but also how it affects the capital market. And I'm talking also about the interest of our customers. So I think that's very important in this discussion of the future of OFE and PPK scenarios, because we've heard different proposals functioning in the public domain. A lot has happened in the perspective of the last 10 years. The Act on Open Pension Funds is 10 years old. ECA and XVIII are functioning, but not the way we would like them to function. The question is, has anyone asked a question about the objective of the potential reform, especially in the context of the development of the capital markets? There's 180 billion PLN that are gathered in OFE, in open pension funds. It's not only about transferring all this money to the third pillar and using it in the transparent manner in the statistics. Having on mind the the weight of this asset owned by 15 million people, this is something that could lay foundations to something bigger. And we cannot lose this opportunity. The changes that could potentially happen, I'm not sure whether this topic will come back, but all these solutions should give to our customers the feeling of stability. There should be simple, and maybe we should use this opportunity to reflect on the third pillar in its entirety and not only think about what to do with these assets. The Polish system, there's only one thing, maybe I shouldn't brag about it, but when describing the old age pension system, we often hear that there is no other such a complex system than the one functioning in Poland. The fact is that if we present three pillars, it's quite simple. We just made the things complex. It's only about communication, because when we talk about revaluation of sub-accounts and we try to talk about the access to money, of course, that gives basis to some doubts about the level of complexity of the system. And we should communicate in a simple manner. So, not like we do it. We don't want to make professors of economics from our investors. An important question, and that will wrap up the first round of questions. AI and everything related to ChatGPT and the state-of-the-art technical developments. Will it change something on the market? Can we use it for investment, as an investment tool? Sometimes it's worth reminding, one Stanford's professor said that in fact artificial intelligence is like auto dictionary in your text message. It can generate a text on every topic, and even books. It uses a lot of data, but sometimes it gives false information, which is dangerous. And there is a think tank appealing to stop works on AI for 6 months, as we're not ready to predict the consequences of development thereof. Recently, the European Union has issued a directive, and so AI-generated text needs to be marked as AI-generated text, despite all facts. I think that the great example is the Stanley's Bank. They employ GPT-4. This algorithm has been developed based on hundreds of thousands of documents on the capital market. In the official communication, it's been stated that it's like a strategist for global equity, would be always within our reach, and something that used to take hours of research now is available within minutes. So it will be used as a tool, as for example the robo-advisors became popular at some point. But the challenges are great because of the possibility of false news and fake information. Somebody needs to supervise it, for sure, in the financial world, and this is an example of application of AI in the financial markets. An interesting thing. Social risks can... There are some social risks involved, for example, disinformation and fake news. So that might lead to depression, and according to WHO, by 2030 that will be a disease number 1. So now in the social media, which are especially prone to dissemination of fake news and misinformation and disinformation, if GPT chat is at the avail of bad people, bad guys, that can this condition may become even worse, because bad news spread better and more effectively and stir more emotions than good news. So there are some concerns which are absolutely justified. So 1 minute for each, and the second round, will we tell anything more about old age pension system? Because there is an important element. We will. A great potential with a small impairment in the public debate. This topic is inexistent. I'm not sure if today. The second round, our time is limited, so this thread that you mentioned. I will make it more general. Of course, there is the possibility of creating and shaping. Okay, you're taking a look at me, so you mean media. Yes, I'm taking a look at you because I think that it's a great topic. Maybe it should be a separate topic of a separate debate, not like a part of the discussion that people don't trust anyone. But how to win trust? This is my question. I don't know. This is the simplest answer to this question. But if I were to provide you a 1 minute answer, you're right that media create information and news which are scandalous, and for sure it's worth winning confidence through relevant education, but not mathematical education, but real one. So young people need to know what they should do, how to behave. We have no proper financial education which would be delivered starting from the primary school. Bartosz said that we should do it in the Catholic style, together with repenting. But usually young people are rather leftist, so the fact that they have no confidence in financial institution is quite natural as state of development. So that's true that the information about financial products are quite complex.
Bartosz, can you please comment on that? That trust in PPK, it's something we keep talking about. It's been part of the discussion between the employer and the employee at different times. Can anything be done? Well, to remember, I was surprised by two things when PPK was implemented. First is the impact of the employers. That is, if an employer is a friend of PPK, you can have 70% participation in a construction company where people, who don't earn so much and are not super educated. And if the employer is an enemy of PPK, then the participation will be single-digit participation or zero. And the second thing is, after the changes of 2013, it's really incredible to what extent things have changed. I started my work back in 2000 in pension funds, and I'm deeply convinced, and there are studies to confirm this, that people don't even know where their money is. There used to be 20 entities, now is just a handful. 70% young people don't know that OFA exists. 15 million people are participants of OFA and don't know how it works. But when the government came and said that what was promised to them as their own money and took that away, that resentment 10 years after is gigantic. So my thesis is that if somebody wanted to manipulate, we're talking civilization, stability is a quality of itself. If anybody
To już będzie nasza ostatnia.
attempts at, meddling with this, that will be our last lost opportunity.
W Polsce systemu dodatkowego
You can't create an additional savings system after the OFE
w związku z tym
experience if we don't manage to use the opportunity of PPK. So it's a task for all of us to build the system step after step, slowly, calmly,
nadużywania bez tego, żeby
without
podważać zaufanie do tego systemu.
undermining the trust to the system.
Taki rząd, albo taki rząd,
Whichever government you like or don't like, this or that government, this system is really built in an optimal way from the point of view of the expectation of Poles, because there's, people are testing the system to see if it does what people are saying in TV and whether it works. People are paying out money from the system.
chciałem jeszcze powiedzieć takiego
And let me add to this that the stability of the system and an agreement, general agreement that PPK works and it's a good product expected by people. And this is why people use this opportunity to save, because it's a good product which was not there before. From the individual point of view, it's super attractive. 51% of assets in the funds is from the employee, 49% from the employer, and from the state. Education is another thing, and this is why we are building the central information, pension information database. Information, people are catching up with the consumer information. We're making up the lag that we had as a society. And some mistakes were made, but conclusions are being drawn. I take 30 seconds, just 30 seconds, please. I have 3 more questions to go. Still, my proposition is that we use the role of the regulator of the state. It's enough to impose an obligatory product or individual and give a month to participate or drop participation. Right, that's great. 30 seconds, thank you very much. A question to the gentleman. A brief answer, please. The 3 areas you represent professionally, brokerage houses, individual investors, equities, debt. Let me ask you about debt and investment funds. What can be done to attract new investors or convince the current ones to come back or invest more? Securities, brokerage houses. I recently read this question. If you have 200,000, what do you invest in? Well, first of all, invest in what you know about. And if you don't know about anything enough to invest, then invest in yourself to learn things, to be ready to invest, to be an expert in something. Pharmaceutics or construction business or whatever, you can't invest in something you don't know. And then, use big leverage. The individual investor, that is the household, usually invests through pension funds, through investment funds. And I think this is what we should focus on. PPK is the best product in recent years created in the Polish market. It's a huge achievement. Definitely in the shade of offer, I completely agree with my first speaker, and trust has to be built to this product. And let's build the wealth of Poles so that they can invest for the future. This money is partially invested into the growth of the economy. They partake in the growth of the profitability of Polish enterprises. Why is it important? It's important statistically. 15 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, Savings of households stood at 750 billion, if I'm not mistaken. At the end of last year, 2,150 million. 15 years ago, 45% were in bank deposits, and at the end of December, 67%. They are lying, they're not doing anything, and being lost to inflation. We need tax education. That's the best educator. If write-offs were not 8%, 8,000, but 80,000, you would see how beneficial that would be for the savers and for the economy. Maciej, the same question goes for you. Bonds. Well, I think bonds are an asset class that nicely corresponds with Poles' preferences in terms of savings, because Poles rather save than invest. The deposit balance shows this quite nicely. The bond market, in the market based on a variable interest rate, shows that this is quite an interesting product for the client due to the percentage rate risk. It's seen by different groups of issuers as attractive, and take the example of the Ministry of Finance, which issued a series of retail bonds. There's the corporate bond market. That's a product for more educated, more aware investors, but it's developing, and issuers like individual investors as a group to which these issues are directed. So evolutionarily, it's going in the right direction, and what's motivational for a higher engagement in this segment of the market is definitely education, tax reliefs, encouraging long-term investment. This would be an economic argument that Poles do pay attention to, and in my opinion, I think that's it. And the last to go. What do we do to have not 300 but 800 million? Well, there's definitely a lot of challenges, and I'm very hopeful about PPK and its development and a direct development of PPE. Clients see and pension funds that investing makes sense, and some will slowly convert to the capital market, investment funds, and other similar products. The problem with the fund is that it's not a chocolate bar. Distribution is not as easy. It's a complex product. There's all kinds of historical issues and inherited questions. Like Krzysztof mentioned in the beginning, it's all down to how we present the product. There are 800, 900 products in funds only, and the offer is even more overwhelming in other segments. And it's all about how the fund or distributor, how the way to the investment vehicle is bought. That's important, and how it's presented is important. And what the customer path is, and what happens once they've already bought. An investment product, as a rule, is rather a push product. So the moment of sale is very important, and whatever happens later on, that's not as important to the salesperson, and the client is left on their own to a certain extent. Taking into account the trends that are developing, I think there are three most important things that the TFI industry has to bear in mind. One, be closer to your customer, and this is about digital solutions to draw the young client to these products. The second part is education, that is, create content to be digestible and to lead the customer through this complex product. Thank you very much, Radosław and Aleksandra. These are very nice summaries of the entire discussion. What Bartosz and Marian said is very valuable. The world is changing. We have a different receiver, but we need to be looking for stability, because this new receiver is no different to the one that's my age, because they're also risk averse, and we need to show them that there are stable, fixed things in the market. Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention.